Welcome back, everybody. You got Will and I-Man here from the Block Runner MetaZone, Roby and Mscribe, and today we got another Ordinal Takeover Metaprotocol edition.
Metaprotocol Wars, dude.
Yeah.
I feel like we made this this contextual video before in the past, because remember when like new metaprotocols were spinning up to the point where they were writing JSON on
Toilet paper,
post-it notes, on like soiled undergarments, whatever the fuck, dude. Whatever there's a surface to like inject information onto.
Yeah.
This is your seeds of metaprotocol data.
Your seeds in your undergarment?
Why not, dude? Soil, dude. Soil, seed. It's perfect.
Yeah.
Outcomes like magic. But now we have like runes just deployed, and so we have another official entrant into this discussion, right?
Mm-hmm.
The metaprotocol space has just expanded a bit, actually pretty significantly considering what runes is and all the
who it comes from.
Yeah, who it comes from. Yeah. So I don't know. The question me and you have been kind of like throwing around to each other.
What are we doing here?
Besides that, you question that regularly.
Yeah, I do.
It's like, what the fuck is actually going on?
Yeah.
But it's like, which of these meta protocols, are we going to end up in a multi-meta protocol, like Bitcoin reality, or a consolidation to just Casey's running the whole damn stack?
Yeah.
What do you think?
Yeah.
That's kind of like what we're exploring.
Yeah, that's the ultimate question. Yeah, because I feel like things like Ethereum and Solana, it's very concise, very clear, like which technologies you're supposed to be using to fulfill whatever it is you're doing.
Yeah.
But Bitcoin isn't clear.
No.
And Bitcoin never intended to be some sort of platform where you like kind of build on top of.
It's true. Yeah, so this whole meta protocol thing was a way to kind of like implement different interpretations of how we can kind of execute on these things that we like to do. Yeah. With blockchains, right? We
Yeah.
like to generate new assets from them. And
Clearly.
Then, and then build, hopefully sensible products out of that into the future.
Seldom.
Whatever, dude.
It's rare.
It happens, though. There's proof of concepts out there.
Yeah.
They do exist. These things can be achieved, right? So, yeah, Bitcoin has a hard start issue that, there's a lot of technical limitations and such. But nonetheless, like the meta protocols are still here. The ones that deployed like a year ago, they're still there.
That's true.
They're integrating more.
They're adding functionality.
Right. Like, so we're about to like run through the list. If you guys are new to this whole Bitcoin space, I'm assuming a lot of you guys are, to our channel specifically, because we've had like quite the influx of subscribers over the last month or two. So a lot of guys just know about runes, right? But you don't know behind the rune story was like a whole fucking year of development on Bitcoin, where these multi-meta protocol initiators, kind of like got this whole thing started, right? And they kind of like inspired Casey, basically.
Yeah, it's like Casey was like, "Oh, you guys like casinos? Well, I can do a casino too."
Yeah,
that's pretty much what he said, and then he did it.
Yeah, he was like sifting through, like, dude, you guys are bloating the fuck out of Bitcoin. Remember, that was the narrative.
Yeah, you're still bloating it with runes.
I know, but that was his thing. It's like, I don't like this BRC20 thing because, you guys have like junk inscriptions. Mm-hmm. It's like, they just kind of get utilized for transfer and then they just lie dormant. You're just, this is not efficient, guys. So let me try to enter my hat in the ring and create some more efficiency or whatever.
Yeah.
So that's the root origin story of how runes came to be.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, let's kind of look through these things, dude.
All right, so let's take a look at Crypto Slam right now, and we're looking at a 30-day sort of chart here, and if you see here, Bitcoin's roughly a 2x in terms of sales volume for, I guess, NFTs.
Very good.
Yeah, so
Bitcoin's doing its thing. That's no shocker,
Yeah, so the same amount of people, roughly in count, are spending roughly double on Bitcoin than they are on Ethereum.
Yeah, hopefully Crypto Slam is still like a reliable fucking data aggregator. I mean, it has its
I think it's
been around for many years. So
yeah,
we're definitely relying this to get our like overview analysis on what's going on between these chains, right?
Yeah.
Okay, but let's get more specific here with runes.
Okay, so now runes, we're looking at runesmarketcap.com, and the first one you see here is Arctic Genesis Rune.
Yeah,
has a volume of 1.6 million. With a market cap of 300 million.
Yeah, so the data here is definitely not. It even says it like they're manually pulling this information together because runes are brand new. Like the APIs probably like don't exist to really
Correct.
reliably aggregate all this information.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, this is a good starting point, right?
Yeah. So total market cap of 447 million. Just to contrast that, when we discovered BRC20 tokens, it was a total market cap of $23 million.
That's true. Literally,
So
that's what got us like
20x less.
20.
Yeah.
Yeah. So I mean, it was very under, and considering like the amount of talk and stuff that's the attention that Runes has kind of garnered before the deployment, you would expect this market cap to be a little bit higher, right?
Well, I mean, yeah, it's like you were saying earlier, this is not accurate. And so it could be significantly higher or significantly lower.
Yeah, that's true. Well, yeah, let's assume it's accurate from a market cap perspective. I mean, it's pretty easy to derive market cap data. I mean, it's just based on spot price valuation.
Yeah, it just depends on which
current
marketplaces are you using to trade and who has the most volume. So it's hard to know that for sure.
Right. So our entry into the BRC20 space, it was like roughly 20 million market cap, but that wasn't like the true starting point of BRC20.
No, it wasn't.
It was literally like sub 1 million.
Yeah.
Like basically zero, whenever BRC20s first launched with the Ordi token.
Yeah.
And then all the meme coin follow-ups.
Yeah.
I mean, we're talking dust, dude. Nobody valued these things for anything.
Right? Yeah, correct.
So the differential is actually probably like in the hundreds of X's, to be honest.
Yeah.
But nonetheless, this is like the like, a race is on, right? Runes just gun was fired.
Mm-hmm.
This is it. This is the position we're at. Like, it's a sensible starting point in context of $1.5 trillion Bitcoin liquidity. Right?
Yeah, but then again, BRC20 introduced the concept of metaprotocols, right? And so now that we're kind of used to metaprotocols, well, here comes Runes, another metaprotocol.
Yeah.
And so, now everyone's kind of used to fungible tokens on Bitcoin. So this is sort of like, it led up to what came to be 447 million. It's like, it's not like it's anything new here is what I'm trying to say.
No, of course not. But remember, BRC20s as like minute of a beginning it had. Remember, it did ramp up to a $1 billion market cap pretty quickly.
Total market cap of $1 billion, yeah.
Like within a 3 to 4 week time frame or something like that. And then it resettled, and then at some point Ordi was 1 billion, Sats was $1 billion, like we had other meme tokens in the hundreds of. So yeah, BRC20 did quite a lot actually, considering how like people perceive it as being just this inefficient trash can of a protocol, right?
Yeah.
So just keep that in context for people who just don't know the history of like what happened before this point.
Correct. Yeah. So Jake, he spent a few hours yesterday combing through combing through the first 10K etch runes. I think there's less than 10K according to what I read from Danny Yang. And so he combed through the first 10K and he found about 100 tickers associated with infrastructure, tools, and Ordinal projects.
That's fascinating.
Yeah, that's a lot.
Specifically, the infrastructure and tools.
Through just a ticker name.
Yeah, well, we knew this was going to happen, right? It's like, of course, the majority of people are going to deploy memes because most people don't have technical ability, right, to build anything. But we knew at some point people who do have technical ability would leverage, the market momentum of runes to potentially try and build something, right?
Mm-hmm.
Through what mechanism? I mean, that's going to be, up to the individual projects, right? But that is interesting to know. Somebody has done the dirty work of sifting through all that meme coin garbage, to be honest.
Yeah.
To try and find some substance, right? So Jake is saying, like, there's substance potential out here, guys.
Yeah, he's about to release the Kraken, it seems here.
Oh, I mean, if we get enough people to pile into this tweet, maybe he will.
Yeah.
I wonder, like, through what format it would be.
Probably a tweet.
Like a tweet thread?
Yeah.
Oh, dude, Jake, if you're watching this, just please, for the sake of, like, all of our sanity, release this.
Yeah, just do it.
So we could do our own.
Yeah, we'll help you deep dive into each of these 100 and see if there's any substance here.
That's what we should do as a community for sure. Let's all like work together.
Yeah.
Is there like an actual valid infrastructure proposal within like this rough?
Yeah.
That'd be cool. All right. So speaking of valid infrastructure proposals, and this is one that emerged from BRC20s.
Mm-hmm.
Right? Let's talk about it, dude.
Yeah, so Trac is one that we picked early on. I think we found it at 30, 50 cents. No, 5 cents.
Oh, dude, it was like market cap was like 200,000.
That's crazy.
Yeah, it was crazy to look at something with that like little market appreciation
Yeah.
and assume it was going to turn into anything.
Yeah. Well, yeah. I mean, that's the whole point of what we do is we look for fundamental like analysis, and we discovered that indexing was a primitive for Bitcoin.
Yeah.
And here we are. This guy who created Trac, he was like, you know what? I'm gonna do an indexer that is completely decentralized.
Yeah.
I was like, nice. Like,
you literally were like, dude, super nice.
Yeah.
You were super torqued about this concept, you know?
Yeah.
Because we have our precedents and our experience from Ethereum. It's like, dude,
yeah,
we've built things on Ethereum. We're like, you know what we really depended on were like, oracles and indexers and stuff like that.
Right.
Things like the graph.
Yeah.
I was like, you know what? We're probably going to need this on Bitcoin. And little did we know, it was like, we need it to like such a higher degree, I feel like.
Yeah, it is. The indexer is the meta protocol.
Yeah, basically.
Yeah, because you can't have a meta protocol if you don't have an indexer following the rules of your meta protocol.
100%. So that is one of the things. It is a core primitive to like, if Bitcoin does manifest into a multi-meta protocol state, which from my own personal belief, I think it will. I mean, with that comes many, many tremendous challenges as far as how do we actually build sensible ecosystems out of that when there's so much fragmented liquidity and such.
Right.
I mean, but that is part of the interesting part of all this, right?
Yeah.
That kind of experiment.
Yeah. So the guy who created this, his name's Benny, and so he's still out there pushing out more innovation. The latest of which is called privilege authorization, which we're utilizing in mScribe. Which allows a deployer of a token to decide who the authority will be.
Okay.
And then that authority will create some sort of interface that allows for a wallet to only mint once. It allows for a wallet to pay a specific price for a mint, right? So what does that mean? Typically in ordinals and NFT projects on Bitcoin, you have to create art, inscribe all that art into yourself, and then list that art on a particular marketplace through PSBTs, which is a partially signed Bitcoin transaction. And then you can sell your art and hopefully make some money.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
So what? Big deal, right? Well, the big deal is every time you inscribe an art piece to yourself, you're spending anywhere between $5 and $15 to do that.
Mm-hmm.
And so you do that 10K times and you're spending around $50,000 just to start a PFP project.
Right.
And so who has $50,000 lying around? Most people don't.
Correct. That's quite the risk to take for deploying something.
Yeah, and so
Bitcoin.
Now with privilege auth, you basically come up with art and you say, I'm going to give someone else an authority, and that authority says, okay, now you can sell that art, and all of a sudden you save yourself 50 grand. And
you seem to know a lot about this stuff, dude.
Oh, I sort of contributed to some of this input here.
I totally agree. Yeah, so it makes a lot of sense to kind of pay attention to what developers are their needs are, right? Because us being able to leverage what Trac has introduced with the tap ecosystem, and like just the ability to be nimble in our design, in our approach to how we want to do things on Bitcoin.
Well, I mean, think about a real developer doesn't want to build anything without some sort of traction. And I was like, Benny, we kind of need this functionality because there's no way people are going to spend 50 grand to inscribe art and to sell art. Yeah. It's just not going to happen. Yeah. I was like, is there a way to do something like this? I was like, yeah, you could come up with a sort of like an additional extension piece to tap where we decide who an authority is through these signatures. And then you just I guess just follow the authority on whatever it is that they mint. Right. So now we're testing this today, right? Yeah. So that's just one thing. So we're talking about Trac here, adding additional functionality to a Metaprotocol. We're looking at CBRC20s here. Moto, they're always cooking up stuff.
Yeah, we had a great interview with them, and they kind of like really were the first ones to be so like, what's the word?
Like so just concise and clear as like,
what's actually going on?
Yeah.
That question is like, what are we doing? Well, this is what we're doing. We're spinning up like our own like individual interpretations of like, how do we build the best casino in the house? The house being Bitcoin.
Yeah.
right? And everybody's gonna have their own flavors, and in order to do that, you got to set up your own like infrastructure, Metaprotocol infrastructure, which is obviously very indexer reliant, right? So they've done all that, and there's like service providers on the way. Things like we're gonna hopefully interview these guys, like from Oil, I think is what they're called, Sandshrew, RPC, like.
Yeah.
These are infrastructure or Metaprotocol infrastructure building tools for developers who want to do the same shit.
Yeah.
It's like I want to deploy my own indexer network.
Yeah, I have my own needs that I can kind of build, but I need an indexer to follow those instructions.
Pretty much. So like these tools are coming, so developers are catching wind of that. And so that's what leads us to believe like this whole multi-meta protocol reality.
It's here to stay.
It's coming, right? So that means no matter how much attention and focus runes are getting today because of marketing and all this stuff, the cool story of the now, doesn't necessarily mean like it's going to be like the win all be all like technical solution for developers in Bitcoin, right?
Yeah, I think ultimately a developer is going to come into Bitcoin and say, I want to build something and I'm going to use a piece here, a piece there, and then here's my product. And ultimately nobody gives a damn whether you're using tap or runes or whatever. It's just like,
well, they'll give a damn if depending on like if there's liquidity there or not.
Yeah, and that's the ultimate issue. But the end user, the guy who's giving you money for whatever product they don't care, right? They don't care, right? But they will care if that asset, it can't be listed anywhere. You can't actually like potentially sell it because there's no liquidity, things like that.
Totally agree.
But ultimately, the protocol, to them, they don't care as long as they're getting the product that they're asking for, right?
Yeah.
And so for us developers, we do care. We need to enable that liquidity. And so that's part of the discussion today is to figure out how do we enable that. But before that, we got Atomicals.
Yeah. I mean, they just released something, the AVM proposition. So another
Atomicals virtual machine.
Yeah, another meta protocol like on its way to introducing its own robust functionality system, right? So that developers can come in and, build these primitives native to this meta protocol, right? Things like DEXs, things like, liquidity pools and stuff like that. So each of them are going to create their own, again, interpretation of how do we create a decentralized market out of like this, all this new function that we have at our hands, right?
Yeah.
We could do this now, but of course they are siloed ecosystems. That is like the major downfall to all of this, right?
Yeah. And so finally, and we're going to kind of close this all off with, so we're talking about BRC20, the first meta protocol.
Yeah. And they got obviously layer 1 foundation, teasing all kinds of crazy things coming up.
Functionality. They're teasing functionality.
Yeah. So there's a common theme, right?
Yeah.
There's a common theme among these meta protocol ecosystem deployers. It's like the thing we really all need collectively is like more functionality.
Yeah. Why? Because they're appealing to developers.
Yes.
Right. We don't need to appeal to people who are generating memes. That doesn't have a long lasting.
No, it doesn't.
Situation for anybody. Right.
Correct.
And then if you're a DJ, it's like, but memes though. It's like if you're a DJ, you actually care about functionality because you can speculate on that functionality.
Yeah.
It makes it easier to speculate. You want this as a DJ.
Well, also it brings us closer to a reality where we don't have to rely on centralized like entities for everything.
Yeah.
Like in the current state of like what's going on in Bitcoin, everyone's like end game is the route is like we need to get support from OKX or Binance. And if we don't, it's like a non-starter issue. But that is not a healthy ecosystem in any stretch of the.
Yeah, and I mean, finally here we have recursive runes, and so this basically allows the communication between runes and inscriptions. So potentially you could have DMT here or whatever, right?
Yeah, I mean, we knew this was going to happen. Some sort of interplay between ordinals and runes, right? Because it's under the
it's under the same
umbrella.
Yeah.
So I mean, this is an example of how you could leverage a meta protocol and like its internal functionalities, even though kind of like trying your best to implement things like state changes and stuff, leveraging two different facets of this protocol, right? So this is like the beginning roads of runes figuring out its own like interpretation of how do we introduce more complexity.
Yeah, right? and so finally we're at the crux of the issue here, right? We've outlined all these meta protocols, and I'm pretty sure we didn't include everything that we've seen.
Yeah.
But we outlined enough meta protocols to outline the problem. So we have all these functionalities, these different developers saying we need these different functionalities, But the issue is that if we're relying on something like OKX and Binance to provide the liquidity for each of these different token standards,
Yeah.
how are they going to decide which of the meta protocols to support? And they have to pick only a few because they don't have the logistics, they don't have the personnel to support all these different meta protocols and then maintain it. Maintaining is a huge issue, right? If any of these meta protocols makes an update, guess what? They have to make an update. And then sometimes they choose not to. And then all of a sudden now you have discrepancies of all kinds of different functionalities, airdrops, and like,
you have to like tell your users to like basically like hands off the keyboard for a week or two, guys, while we like readjust our indexers to kind of like
it's a mess
to understand the new rules. Essentially,
so then
it is a mess.
So then, as a community, how do we decide? Where do we go from here with all these like meta protocols? Developers need that base functionality to be able to build stuff, but they're not going to build on any meta protocol if the ultimate product has no support from any of the major players. And then what are we talking about here? Binance and OKX. Why are we relying on these guys? Right? Are we going back to centralized?
I know, right?
Euphoria again?
Yeah, it definitely doesn't make much sense, right?
No.
So like Bitcoin's all about decentralization, and we've unlocked this new paradigm of ecosystem development on the most like decentralized blockchain in existence. And like that is the value premise of everything we're building on top of Bitcoin. And then like at the end of it, everybody's motivation is like to just refocus everything into the most centralized, entities and actors of all of Web3.
Right.
It doesn't make any sense, right? So the real things that need to be paid attention to is, as these meta protocols continue to evolve and expand their functionality, which ones bring in the developers who are going to deploy the primitives native to those meta protocols?
And we have attempts to kind of solve this issue, right? Ghosty Cash, and there's a few others, but they ultimately have the same problem to decide which of the meta protocols do they support, because it means that you have to maintain that support. And it's a huge like overhead issue.
I don't think there's going to be like multi meta protocol dApps anytime soon. That sounds like one hell of a crazy conundrum. One of the newest, it's like it's not even a trilemma. It's like
it's an octopus
lemma. Octolemma, dude. It's quite the problem. So it's really just about how do we take these meta protocols that do exist and that probably will come to exist down the line. Once there's more like infrastructure support, like rolling up your own indexer and implementing your own, supporting your own logic base and stuff. It's how do you nurture that into something that attracts a lot of liquidity. It's kind of like the same thing all these side chains and L2s are trying to do.
Right.
But they're piggybacking on Ethereum technology to do this.
And not only that, there hasn't been a meta protocol that just like constricts the utilization of Bitcoin so much that you have to use a side chain. Like kind of like what we saw with CryptoKitties on Ethereum. Like for months, it was like $200 per transaction.
Well, I think BRC20 probably got the closest to that, right? It was like a week or two.
BRC20 and then Runes for like 6 hours.
I mean, I guess Runes it's doing its thing. It's still chugging along, and it's going to have its moments where things are going to pop off, maybe like new sectors of interest.
Yeah, sure.
So I mean, at some point we will get there. But you're right; they all need to mature, all of them. And like DeFi is going to be that thing, and DeFi is going to start at layer 1.
Right? It has to.
That's the big misconception, and a lot of these like VCs are buying into the idea of like it's the layer 2 side chains that are going to activate DeFi first for Bitcoin. I don't think so. I think like these meta protocols are the ones that have to innovate and they're going to attract the actual liquidity of the market. And then from there, once they actually do what you're saying, like they actually clog or like make the market demand for scalability pretty painfully obvious
for everybody
for a prolonged period of time. It's like then these meta protocols start to find their own native scaling solutions, right? I think. That's my own like.
So what you're saying is we're gonna have these meta protocols basically become sort of app chains,
basically,
and these meta protocols are gonna select their L2 provider,
or create their own like they're not depending on Ethereum virtual machine.
No, they're
most
not.
of these side chains. That's what they offer, right? They're building their own Bitcoin layer 1 metaprotocol logic, right?
Yeah.
Like you were saying, it's an off-chain logic processor, not an on-chain one. That's what Ethereum virtual machine does.
Yeah, correct.
It executes all this on-chain. So it's completely different. These L2s are not like, they're not designed for that, I don't think.
No, yeah. I mean, it doesn't have to be EVM. It could be ICP.
Yeah.
What other one? I think there's one more. No, I guess that was it.
Well, I mean, I don't know. You could do this in many different like formats, but
You could do this completely off chain if you want.
yeah. So what's the grand takeaway here? You know, I mean, I don't know, to be honest. We're talking about runes. It's just, man, there's a lot to pay attention to. We're in a gray area.
I think in a decentralized manner, when a meta protocol has to win, that meta protocol has to have developers making stuff where there's like huge amount of traction. And then that's the meta protocol that I would assume that a lot of these like decentralized DEXs, centralized exchanges, they decide to support just because there's a huge market share.
Pretty much. So that's it. That's the takeaway, is like, while the market is mostly fixated and focused on, you know, meme coin hot potato, which of these memes is going to like go viral next.
Yeah.
The actual thing to be paying attention into is what we're discussing now. Like the actual technical race for the meta protocol space.
Yeah. What are the devs doing? What decisions are they making? That's what you got to pay attention to.
Yeah. And of course, that's kind of hard to do if you're not a developer. If you're just like a purebred degen speculator, then it's like, fuck that noise.
Dude, learn to code, right?
No, you don't have to do all that. Just watch our channel, dude, because that's what we're going to be doing.
All right. Yeah, that's it for us. If you guys agree or disagree, let us know in the comment section below. We did talk about a lot, Metaprotocols, and I guess its final outcome for the Bitcoin ecosystem. What is it going to be? All right. Appreciate you guys for watching, and we will catch you in the next video.
Peace.